Chapter 783. Why do you want to cooperate with the flower fairies? Actually, not mentioning personal feelings, the flower fairies were people worth roping in. This was an outstanding support race. Healing, treasure hunting, planting, scouting, assisting in cultivation, and assisting in battle. With many different abilities, they were natural helpers. The flower fairies were very pure, so there was no need to be on guard against them. Moreover, once he obtained the flower fairies' trust and support, they would do their best to help. Because they were innately born, the flower fairies were very suited to building a spiritual world and a spiritual network. A spiritual space was not something anyone could create. Each spiritual space was like opening a new world, and everything, including the laws of operation, was created by the Creator. If the laws of the spiritual space were not stable or conflicted, the spiritual space would not last long before shattering. Chu Tian did not have anyone who could do this for now. Just like how spatial engineers needed innate spatial energy, spiritual engineers needed innate spiritual energy. Even after tens of thousands of years, spiritual engineers would still be comparable to alchemists and array masters, or even more popular than that. This was because there were many people that could become alchemists and array masters, but there were very few that could become spiritual engineers. After all, spiritual energy was very rare, so the price of a spiritual engineer was very high. There was a large demand for spiritual engineers. This was because a spiritual space that could hold tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of people without collapsing needed engineers who were older than them to create and maintain it. Of course, Chu Tian's current source energy computer had not been developed yet, so he could not calculate spiritual parameters with a computer's supercomputing power. So, it was impossible to create a spiritual world that could hold a country or even a race. However, if he could train suitable people, a small spiritual space was not a problem. Chu Tian had the basic knowledge of spiritual energy. The flower fairies were innately more sensitive to the laws of nature than normal beings, and the entire race had innate spiritual energy. The flower fairies were, without a doubt, a very good choice. This was a very good chance for the flower fairies. There was no race in this world that could be biased. The forest of chaos followed the dark law of the forest. But wasn't the entire continent the same? The personalities, beliefs, and lifestyles of the various races were different, and these differences were the source of conflict. War could not be avoided, and the weak would always be enslaved by the strong. The flower fairies did not have any battle strength, but they were very precious. If they were discovered by humans, spirit beasts, or other races, the final result would not be good. The elves were declining and could not even take care of themselves, so this protective umbrella could not be relied on. The flower fairies could only rely on themselves if they wanted to survive. If they cooperated with miracle commerce and controlled the top-grade spiritual technology, the flower fairies would have a place on the continent. It would be enough for them to negotiate with other countries and provide their race with a stronger foundation and foundation. Chu Tian slowly persuaded the flower fairies. Can we create more spiritual spaces? We can even create a virtual world, allowing people of different races and identities to communicate inside. The flower fairies lived carefree lives, not having any sense of suffering and not pursuing material pleasures. Only spiritual and artistic things could attract the love and pursuit of the flower fairies. Chu Tian outlined a perfect blueprint in just a few words, making the flower fairies yearn for it. The flower fairies were a race that was hard to win over. This was not because their personalities were bad. Rather, it was because the flower fairies had good personalities, so they were hard to win over. Why did the world have war? Why did the world have killing? Why did the world have plundering? That was purely because of human desires, just like what Chu Tian and Cenarius had said. Humans are greedy, so they fight. Humans are selfish, so they steal. Humans are greedy, so they are addicted to sensual pleasures. Humans are greedy, so they kill and kill. The flower fairies were different. They were born from the spiritual energy of the world, absorbing the essence of all living things. They would not grow old, they would not get sick, and they had no desires. They were naturally happy, so they were easily satisfied. They could not be easily moved. It was hard to use money, resources, love, or other benefits to entice them. There was only one method the humans had to control the flower fairies. That was to create a kind of medicine that could destroy one's mind and use a special taming method to make the flower fairies lose their nature and turn them into puppets, allowing the humans to do whatever they wanted. Chu Tian was not stupid enough to explain how great the future of this technology was. What use did it have for the flower fairies? A race that did not need to eat, drink, or cultivate. How could they be interested in making money? What meaning was there in changing history to the flower fairies? A race that had no parents, no country, and could not age or get sick. What meaning did it have? But Chu Tian believed in one thing. It was impossible for a living being to not have any desires. The flower fairies were immortal, but the flower fairies were very dependent on their environment. If their environment was destroyed, the flower fairies would not be able to live. Look, the people of the continent were building houses, castles, palaces, and lakes. They were wantonly cutting down forests, wildly hunting animals, and polluting the environment. The forest of chaos was very large. The forest was in the middle of several empires. Who could guarantee that the forest of chaos would remain the same after tens of thousands of years? So they had to develop spiritual technology. Because people had rich spiritual energy, their pursuit of material things would decrease. Didn't people like destroying things? They could destroy things in the spiritual space. Didn't people like palaces and temples? They could build them in the spiritual space. This virtual world wouldn't pollute the environment no matter what they did. Chu Tian's reasoning made the flower fairies feel that it was very reasonable. The only thing they cared about was their homeland. So with the popularization of spiritual technology, people could reduce the amount of war and pollution to nature. The flower fairies looked at Chu Tian with worship. Intelligent, smart, kind, and far-sighted, the flower fairies were too lucky to have this kind of friend. The flower fairies trusted and worshipped Chu Tian, adding in their love for spiritual technology and Chu Tian's environmental protection. The flower fairies finally made an important decision. They wanted to join miracle commerce. They wanted to create a spiritual era. Chu Tian sat on the ground chatting with the flower fairies, and the flower fairies became more and more excited. Their lives in the past were very ordinary, gathering dew and pollen every day and taking care of the garden when they had nothing to do. They never had a goal in life. But now it was different. The flower fairies wanted to learn spiritual technology from Chu Tian. They wanted to use the crystals in the Lost Forest to create an interesting and fun spiritual space. It's done. They had another reliable ally. Chu Tian could really be proud of himself. This could be considered a first. When everyone was talking about this topic, large amounts of horned eagles suddenly appeared in the sky above the garden. There was an elf holding a bough riding on each horned eagle, and the one leading them was a powerful dragon eagle. It's the elves. This is bad. They must be here to capture Chu Tian. The flower fairies were now completely convinced that Chu Tian was not a bad person. How could this kind of intelligent person who was passionate about protecting the forest be a bad person? Eldest jumped off the back of the dragon eagle and instantly landed in front of Chu Tian. She said with a cold face, "You, return to the tribe. The elves will announce the verdict." What are you acting like? Who doesn't know that your elves are begging me? Chu Tian didn't need to guess to know that the elf had already understood the consequences and wanted to ask Chu Tian to return. Only Eldest was naturally cold, and she couldn't put down her face, so her expression was very stiff. He had to admit his mistakes. What kind of attitude was this? Chu Tian was very dissatisfied. He suddenly thought of something and said, "You elves are so hesitant. Don't you just want to kill me? Just kill me with an arrow. There's no need to say so much." Alidus' brows jumped up. "Stop!" The flower fairy shouted. "Chu Tian is the flower fairy's good friend, and we have already cooperated with Chu Tian. He is a good person. The elves' groundless accusations are not valid. We will not agree." "That's right. The elves go back. Chu Tian will not go with you." The flower fairies surrounded Chu Tian, using their little bodies to block in front of him, looking like they would protect Shu Tian with their lives. Eldest was a bit stunned. He obtained the trust of the flower fairies this quickly? How did this human do it? Cooperation? Flower fairies? This kind of saying was enough to make the elves surprised. The flower fairies were a mysterious race, but they were a weak race without any battle strength. Moreover, they had a small population, only a small group in the entire forest. Why would the human cooperate with the flower fairies? The flower fairies were aloof and peaceful, so why would they be moved? The flower fairies want to create a world with miracle commerce, changing the lives of the people of the continent, reducing the wars on the continent, and protecting our forest. The flower fairies were all filled with pride, and they said with a firm attitude, "The elves don't need to do anything. Shu Tian is a gift from the forest god to us. He is a messenger of peace. He is definitely not a bad person. Move away, elves. Move away, elves." The flower fairies charged out to drive away the elves. The flower fairies were pitifully weak, but the elves did not dare move against them. When they saw the flower fairies pledge their lives to protect Shu Tian, and Shu Tian standing in the middle of the flower fairies with his arms crossed, revealing a proud smile, the elves almost spat out blood from anger. This fellow was clearly doing this on purpose. But what kind of demonic technique did this fellow use? He actually made the flower fairies run around in circles. The flower fairy Lulu said, "Have Ulysses cancel all the accusations against Chu Tian, otherwise the flower fairies will not allow the elves to touch a single hair on Chu Tian. Cancel the accusations. Cancel the accusations." The flower fairies all began to shout out. "Second elder, what do we do?" Eldest was also riding Tiger. The elves did not plan on killing Chu Tian, but if they couldn't explain this, where would the elves put their face? "We can't harm the flower fairies. We'll go back first." Chapter 784. The marauders continued to attack, causing the small town's casualties to rise to over 1,000 people. Just the Allied army alone had lost over 500 people. Paper could not cover fire. The news quickly spread through the small town like a plague, immediately causing the small town's people to panic. There was no one that didn't know about these infamous forest thugs. There was no power in the surrounding area that could fight them. They were bold and cruel, not to mention a small town that had just been established. They would even rob a caravan from a forest city. There was nothing these wild thugs didn't dare to do. These locusts that people hated were simply the enemies of the forest. However, the marauders were very mobile, immediately leaving after doing something, never staying in one place for a long time. The forest of chaos was very big. It was impossible to chase after them. Therefore, most of the time, the victims couldn't do anything. Because the marauders were too cruel, there were some local powers that surrendered without fighting in order to save their lives, taking the initiative to give the marauders what they wanted. Oldman's small town's prosperity had gathered a considerable amount of resources, so it was already noticed by the large local powers in the forest, but they never thought that the marauders would arrive first. The marauders kept attacking the small town's troops in the wild. This was undoubtedly a demonstration to the small town. This kind of small power did not need to attack at all. The marauders used their fierce reputation to make them collapse internally and surrender without fighting, saving quite a bit of effort. I propose to immediately close the small town. That's right, we can negotiate with the marauders. Don't they just want things? I'll give them what they want. In the Oldman small town meeting, the various tribe chiefs were discussing. Almost everyone did not agree to fighting with the marauders because there was a large disparity in strength between the two sides. The marauders dared to plunder the forest. It was not something a small town with tens of thousands of soldiers could stop. Not to mention that the marauders were all aerial troops, so their mobility was too high. Oldman small town and the surrounding local powers all lacked aerial troops. Without an army that could stop the marauders, how could they deal with these fierce marauders? Moreover, the giant demons were very good at alchemy, so they could poison the nearby water sources, grass, and etc. First, they would seal off Oldman small town and trap the army inside. Everyone calmed down. Meng Qingwu stood up. There is still a chance to turn this matter around. Actually, with Meng Qingwu's cautious nature, the safest method was to seal off the small town. Oldman Small Town was an underground town, so the Marauders' aerial cavalry was not suited to attack this kind of town. As for surrounding them, that was also impossible. With Miracle Commerce's spatial transportation technology, it was impossible for the town to be trapped. All the supplies could be transported in from the outside world. How long could the Marauders surround them for? Don't forget that they were a notorious organization, so they did not dare stay in one place for too long. As long as Miracle Commerce could hold on for a while, the Marauders would naturally collapse without attacking. Although this method was safe, it was still a bad plan. Oldman Small Town would suffer a large loss, and it could cause the unstable alliance to collapse. The most important thing was that Meng Qingwu understood Chu Tian too well. Making Chu Tian hide like a turtle was harder than making the sun rise from the west. If Miracle Commerce wanted to establish themselves in the forest, they could not avoid the Marauders. How could they just hide? Everyone, there is no need to panic. Meng Qingwu calmly said to everyone, Miracle Commerce has advanced source energy weapons, so the air force of the forest bandits does not have any advantage against our powerful firepower. We have the power to resist. The representatives of the various tribes looked at each other in blank dismay. The only variable now was Miracle Commerce. As for how strong Miracle Commerce was, the tribes had no idea because Miracle Commerce had always been very mysterious. They had a strong berserker army, sharp source energy weapons, and many other unexplainable abilities. Perhaps Miracle Commerce really had a way to deal with the Marauders. One of the locals stood up and said, even if Miracle Commerce has the ability to deal with the Marauders, our tribes do not have this kind of ability. If the Marauders attack us in anger, wouldn't our nearby tribes suffer a calamity? That's right. Everyone in Oldman Small Town had a share. Everyone could be assured. Miracle Commerce dares to do what they want. Meng Qingwu confidently promised the locals, Miracle Commerce has never taken the initiative to invade others, but since others have come to our door, we will not retreat. We will declare war on the Marauders. Declare war? The Marauders were famous for being hard to deal with. The giants of the forest could not kill these locusts, so how could Miracle Commerce declare war on them? No matter how mobile the Marauders are, they still need a foothold. Miracle Commerce will use our advanced technology to locate the Marauders' nest and gather everyone's strength to sweep out the Marauders. Only like this can we shake the forest. Otherwise, once this group of Marauders leaves, another group will come. No one wants to see endless harassment. Miracle Commerce wanted to exterminate the Marauders. The locals all had strange expressions as they whispered to each other, finally deciding to wait and see. They would see what Miracle Commerce would do first. It would be best if it was as she said, otherwise once something went wrong, the tribes would immediately withdraw to avoid being caught up in this disaster. Meng Qingwu first appeased the locals and then immediately went to a secret room in Oldman Small Town. Inside, there were many huge mirrors. Each mirror was 2 to 3 feet tall. The surface of the mirror was very clear. A gentle woman and a few employees were standing in front of one of the big mirrors, discussing something. Kaidai, how is it on your side? Elder sister, look. This is the image taken by the surveillance airship. Phone Kaidai slightly moved her body and the image transfer mirror behind her began to display the images. These images were clearly taken from high up in the sky. The entire forest was a deep green color, but because it was too high up, the details were not clear. Look here. Meng Qingwu could clearly see a large group of giant bats moving at a fast speed, flying through the forest at a low altitude. They stopped and fought in several places before leaving in another direction. Meng Qingwu gave a cold snort. That's right, it's them. Feng Kaidai said with a face filled with admiration. It's all thanks to Elder Sister's surveillance airship. Otherwise, it would have been hard to find traces of them. But the surveillance range is limited. We could determine the direction of the Marauders, but we can't determine where they are. Meng Qingwu had stayed in Southern State for a long time, preparing for Miracle Commerce every minute. There were all kinds of special airships that took up a lot of Meng Qingwu's energy. In the skies above the Forest of Chaos, there was a communication airship every few thousand miles. Meng Qingwu also made surveillance airships and battle airships. These new generation airships not only had high performance, they also had a layer of hidden image mirrors on their surface, allowing them to simulate various colors and camouflage, making it hard to distinguish them from the ground. They could operate at a maximum altitude of 50,000 meters, and most of the time, they were parked at 20 to 30,000 meters. The existence of these airships had always been a secret of the company, and the people of Oldman Small Town did not know about it. There were several airships waiting above them. The images shown on the image transfer mirrors were actually taken by the surveillance airships 20,000 meters in the air. Meng Qingwu ordered, "Contact the second heaven's eye and search the area. Find where the marauders are hiding and have the heaven's punishment prepare to attack." Meng Qingwu gave the special airships of Miracle Commerce a name. The one used to set up the communication network was called the Heaven's Net. The one used to monitor the ground was called the Heaven's Eye, and the one used to attack was called the Heaven's Punishment. Miracle Commerce had 6 Heaven's Net airships, 2 Heaven's Eye airships, and 1 Heaven's Punishment airship. Now the Heaven's Eye and Heaven's Punishment were in Oldman Small Town and could listen to orders at any time. Feng Kaidai immediately picked up the communication device. Hey, second Heaven's Eye. This is the Forest Command Center. The vice chairman has ordered to search the southwest. As soon as the order was given, 40,000 meters in the air, the second Heaven's Eye airship that was on standby suddenly began to slowly descend and began to move forward. The cabin of the airship automatically opened, and countless eye-like image transferring cameras appeared, scanning the entire forest. At the same time, the image transferring mirrors in the small town's control room lit up. The entire forest appeared on the image transferring mirrors, and all the images were transmitted in real time. A voice came from the communication device, tens of thousands of meters in the air. Second Heaven's Eye, begin the operation. Another communication device also sent out a sound. First Heaven's Punishment calling the command center. All the weapons have been loaded. Please give your orders. Wait for orders. Yes, these stupid locals. Feng Kaidai closed the communication device and revealed an excited expression. They still don't know who they have provoked, right? We'll let them see today what is called the power of technology. On the other side, Chu Tian and Meng Yingying were collecting the troll poison arrows. The two of them scraped off the poison on the arrows and analyzed it. This was the troll race's secret poison. But how could this kind of child's play trick Chu Tian's eyes? Chu Tian easily reverse-engineered the poison's composition and formula. He gave the antidote to Yingying, immediately send it to the Southern Summer Laboratory and Alchemy Factory. Give them 3 days to get 10,000 portions of the antidote. Understood. Yingying immediately took the formula and sent the information. After this information was sent to the Southern Summer Laboratory, Miracle Commerce's various alchemy workshops began to work. Large amounts of antidote would be made in a short period of time and sent to Oldman Small Town through spatial transportation. The reason why the troll race made people tremble in fear. One of the reasons was that their alchemy skills were very high, especially in the field of poison. If the soldiers took the antidote before the battle, the troll's poison arrows would lose their effect. Without these poison arrows, could they fight the berserkers and the ogres? Without these poison arrows, could they block the wild barrage of the source energy weapons? Keep dreaming. Chapter 785. Eldest told the elves what had happened when she returned to the tribe. What? He's not coming? The elves were anxious and angry. Did this human really think he could eat the elves? Damn, his cultivation base was clearly this weak. Even a child from the elven tribe could defeat him. What confidence did he have to not place the elves in his eyes? This was simply preposterous. When had these noble and proud elves ever suffered this kind of anger? The flower fairies did not have any strength, but they were still the elves' friends. They provided large amounts of top-quality medicine and resources for the elves, helping the elves grow stronger, so they had to give the flower fairies face. We have a 1,000-year friendship with the flower fairies. We can't break it because of this matter. Ulysses knit his brows. I want to know what happened in the elven flower garden. I'll immediately find a flower fairy and ask her. The elves immediately found a flower fairy. The flower fairies also wanted to resolve the conflict between Chu Tian and the elves, so they told them everything. And it's roughly like this. The flower fairy simply explained the matter. Other than the spiritual space, the flower fairies are also preparing to make movies. Some of the flower fairy sisters are already preparing and will go with Chu Tian to his small town in a few days. Movies were related to the spiritual domain. With the flower fairies' help, the movies would be even better in the future, and it would be even better to watch. Moreover, the flower fairies like movies, so Chu Tian gave this job to the flower fairies. The elves were shocked. The flower fairies had not left the garden in 1,000 years. How could they just leave because of a stranger? The flower fairies were very weak. Did they not know that this was very dangerous? Ulysses broke out in a cold sweat, but he was not shocked by the flower fairies' decision. Rather, he was shocked by another important matter. You're saying that Chu Tian picked up a crystal stone in the Lost Forest and immediately developed a new technology, creating a stable existence that can accommodate many people, creating an illusion that can exist in time? That's right. That's it. Chu Tian had left the tribe for several hours, and he did not know about the Lost Forest before this. It was purely an impromptu situation, suddenly creating a new technology. Was this person still human? How many more shocking miracles did he have to create? When Eldis heard this, she suddenly felt a bit of regret. If she knew it was like this, she would have agreed to this fellow a few days ago. If Chu Tian owed her a favor, she would be able to exchange it for a large benefit for the elves. Vivian was not wrong. Chu Tian's knowledge and wisdom was at least 100,000 years ahead of the elves. If they let him be for 10-20 years, this human could change the continent. If the elven race remained stagnant and did not make any progress, it was very likely that they would be eliminated in this era of change. The flower fairies did not know the elves' complicated feelings. Chu Tian said that this technology must be developed. This is because in the future, he will create a giant spiritual world where all the races in the world can interact. Not only will this reduce the distance between people, it will also reduce the consumption of energy, resources, wars, and killing in the real world. This will protect the forest and the environment. This kind of grand dream is not something a bad person can think of. So, the elves must drop the accusations against Chu Tian, otherwise the flower fairies will not allow the elves to approach him. The flower fairy's voice was very firm. In the flower fairy's eyes, Chu Tian was not just a genius. He was also a great saint that could save the world. With this person in the world, everyone's lives would become better and there would be fewer wars and deaths. If the elves killed him, they would be committing an eternal sin. Whether it was for Chu Tian or the elves, the flower fairies would not allow this matter to happen. Also, Cenarius has said it. The flower fairies suddenly thought of something. He has already made the decision to have the flower fairies bring the ancient tree of life seed with Chu Tian. Ulysses was shocked again. What? The ancient tree of life seed. Can they just casually take it away? There's only one seed in the entire forest of chaos. What would happen if something were to happen to it? Cenarius can't take this responsibility. There was more than one ancient tree of life on the continent. Therefore, there was more than one group of elves. In the entire forest of chaos elves, there was only one ancient tree of life, and only one ancient tree seed was passed down. Although they couldn't find a way to make it sprout, it was still a sacred object in the hearts of the elves. This seed had been kept by the trance Cenarius for a long time. The flower fairies were in charge of finding a way to raise it, and the elves were paying close attention to it. Now it was good. They actually wanted to take the seed away. If it was taken away by someone else, who could take responsibility for this? The flower fairy explained. We in the trance couldn't find a way to raise the ancient tree of life, but Chu Tian said he had confidence in activating the seed, so Cenarius decided to let Chu Tian give a try. The elves were on the verge of collapsing when they heard this. How many earth-shattering things did Chu Tian have to do before he was willing? Spatial technology, spiritual technology, any one of them was a profound elemental energy science worthy of thousands of years of research. Now, he had even said that he wanted to save the ancient tree of life seed. If he could really do it, then this person's intelligence was something that even the ancient gods could not compare to. The elves are too stingy on this matter. The flower fairy complained in a voice. Didn't Chu Tian just use an elven immortal herb? He didn't steal it, and he has already repaid it 100 times over. If we continue to pursue this matter, the elves are too ungentlemanly. At worst, the flower fairies will compensate the elves with 10 even better immortal herbs. This was not a problem with the herb at all. It was just a trivial level 2 immortal herb. These elven elders did not care about it at all. The key was the human identity and Princess Vivian's identity. The two of them had caused quite a stir in the tribe. Humans were a large race made up of hypocrisy. The most important rule of the elves was that the elves, especially the female elves, were forbidden from interacting with humans. Vivian's actions were a large taboo, and she was involved in the war between the humans and the spirit beasts, violating at least 10 of the clan's rules, which was why it was like this. The flower fairies did not know the dangers of the world and thought of the problem too simply. Vice Speaker, this matter. There's no other way. We were wrong this time. Vivian has really found an incredible person for the elves. Ulysses shook his head. The Elven King has always been looking for reform, but the conservative faction is too strong. This might be a great opportunity for the elves, and since it's already in front of us, we should grab hold of him. We have opened the Elven Court with great fanfare, and all the fellows in the clan are paying attention to this matter. I'm afraid, if we let him go, what will the Elven Council do? Respecting the virtuous is natural. Losing a bit of face is not worth mentioning. Me and the Elven King will naturally settle the voices in the council. Chu Tian wouldn't believe it if it was said, but the elf had always been divided into reformists and conservatives. Vivian's father was the current Elven King, and he was a leader that advocated for reform. Under the leadership of the Elven King, the elves had gained 3 cities in 100 years, and their sphere of influence had increased by 20%. The conservative faction of the elves was always the strongest, and their representative was the Elven Council's chairman. His influence in the elves was not below the Elven King's. Those were true old-fashioned people that followed etiquette and rules, pursuing rule without doing anything and letting nature take its course. It was impossible for the Elven King to not care about his daughter, but because of his status, he couldn't personally interfere, so he sent his trusted Ulysses to handle this matter. When Vivian was sentenced, she would be locked up for 10-20 years at most. She wouldn't be severely punished. Now the situation was different. Ulysses needed to take some other actions. He brought several elven elders and came to the Flower Fairy's garden once again. Chu Tian was currently enjoying himself. When he saw the elves return, his face immediately sunk. What? You've come to catch me again? Mr. Chu Tian, perhaps there is a misunderstanding between us. Ulysses' old face squeezed out a smile. Clearly not used to this kind of humble attitude towards humans, I've already investigated it clearly. I hope that your excellency can openly communicate with the elves and clear up this misunderstanding. The elves were the Flower Fairy's friends. Chu Tian was also the Flower Fairy's friends. If friends could solve their problems, of course it would be a very good thing. Lulu happily jumped up. I already said that the elves would understand. Chu Tian wanted to tease the noble elves, but seeing this situation, he let it go. Chu Tian also wanted to go back early. After all, the elves' efficiency was too low, and he was afraid that he would be delayed for 10-15 days. He was afraid that Miracle Commerce's development in the Forest of Chaos would be affected. Then what do you think we should do? Ulysses saw that the situation had taken a turn and immediately let out a sigh of relief. Because this matter is very important, we need to discuss it with the Elven Council before making a final decision. But since it is a misunderstanding, the Elven Council will not make it hard for you. So, can you come with us? There's still a meeting? I'll start your head. Elves are always slow in their work. If it's delayed for half a year, how will the hundreds of thousands of people in my Chamber of Commerce be able to feed themselves? Fuck the Elven Council. Chu Tian's eyes sparkled a few times before he suddenly revealed a smile. Go to the Elven Council? All right, I also want to ask for compensation from the Elven Council. Compensation request? The elves stared at him. What compensation request? Are you playing dumb? Vivian is an employee trained by Miracle Commerce and has a contract with Miracle Commerce. Now that she has learned Miracle Commerce's highest-level secret technology, she has been taken back by you fellows and locked up for 200 years. Chu Tian said in a very impolite voice. 200 years. This is too much for us humans. Miracle Commerce will suffer a large loss because of this. Does that mean I don't have the right to ask for compensation? Then how much compensation do you want? Have you evaluated the value of the spatial technology? I don't want much. Just give me 5 elven cities. Ulysses almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The elves didn't even have 10 cities in the forest. This fellow wanted to compensate him with 5 cities. Wasn't this asking for the elves' lives? Chu Tian looked at the elves and was very dissatisfied with their expressions. Don't the elves respect justice and fairness? Vivian has the spatial technology, and although it is a drop in the ocean, its value cannot be compared to 5 small cities in the forest. I have suffered a large loss. You've taken advantage of it, and you want to burn the bridge after crossing the river? Is this the fairness of the elves? The elves whispered to each other. Ulysses wiped his sweat and said, the elves will not pay this kind of compensation request, not to mention that Vivian's punishment still needs to be discussed, so I don't care that much. You've wasted so many days of my time. Shouldn't you compensate me a bit? Chu Tian unreasonably said. I don't want much. Just 100,000 high-grade source stones is enough. The veins on Ulysses' forehead popped out. The elves did not do business, so they were very poor. What 100,000 high-grade source stones mean? Was this brat crazy? Chapter 786. Meng Yingying received news from the southern summer country that the antidote had already begun production. The antidote Chu Tian had researched was not only low in cost, it was also made from common materials. Miracle Commerce had the resources in the southern summer country, so it was not hard to make it. Perhaps large amounts of antidote would be sent over soon. What preparations should we make now? Before the antidote is sent over, we don't have the conditions to fight. We need to avoid being attacked by the marauders in the next few days, and we also need to find out where the marauders are hiding. Chu Tian rubbed his chin as he thought about it. Let's find a time to talk to the giant demons. What did you say? Meng Yingying's beautiful eyes instantly popped out. Is there something wrong with your head? I don't have anything to talk to them about. Do you think they will come? They will definitely come. Chu Tian said with a confident expression. Isn't this the result they want to see? Chu Tian is right. At this time, a dignified beauty walked in. The marauders' current actions are just to create panic and surrender without a fight. Our negotiation request is exactly what they want. This method can stall for a few days, and we can lure the snake out of its hole. We can find a marauder's hiding place, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So it's like this. Meng Yingying felt that it was a bit reasonable. But how do we contact them? The marauders must have left people in the forest to observe our reactions. We'll write down the time and place of our meeting in the forest, and they will definitely come. The young miss is very smart. Not like a silly girl. Who's a silly girl? Meng Yingying looked like she was about to explode. Chu Tian laughed. I'll leave this matter to the young miss. Meng Qingwu was swift and decisive when she did things. She immediately personally wrote a letter, sincerely asking the marauders to stop killing and inviting them to meet in a basin outside Oldman Canyon in 3 days. Meng Qingwu was afraid the trolls wouldn't understand, so she very considerately wrote it in 3 common forest languages. Then she made over 100 copies of these invitations and had people secretly post them in conspicuous places in the forest. This move was really effective. Oldman Small Town did not suffer any more attacks. If their guesses weren't wrong, when the marauders saw these invitations, they would happily drink and celebrate their easy harvest. Then they would rest up and prepare for the negotiation in 3 days. In these few days, large amounts of antidotes were sent through the space warehouse to the small town. Chu Tian was not idle. He made some array flags and used them to arrange a special source energy array. This source energy array had a very simple function. It was just to disrupt and weaken sound waves. The trolls were good at taming bat beasts. The bat beasts were not just the marauders' mounts. They were also the marauders' eyes. With their powerful ultrasonic detection abilities, it was hard for anything to escape the trolls' eyes. But because of this, the trolls were very reliant on the bat beast detection abilities. If the bat beast detection abilities were not good, it would be a surprise to the trolls. 3 days quickly passed. Meng Qingwu immediately found a large group of suspicious figures on the monitor in the command room. When she zoomed in, she revealed a look of joy. There were over 1,000 marauders, flying out of a cave several hundred kilometers away. They were quickly heading in the direction of Oldman Small Town. That's right. This must be the marauders' stronghold. Meng Qingwu immediately deployed. First Heaven's Punishment, immediately head to the target area. Wait for orders and prepare to attack. First Heaven's Punishment, roger that. A large airship slowly moved tens of thousands of meters in the air. This is bad, this is bad. Not long after, a werewolf ran into the town in a panic. A large group of marauders is coming. When the townspeople heard this, they were all shocked. Were the marauders about to launch an attack? Chu Tian appeared to comfort everyone. Everyone, there is no need to panic. This is just a small trap we set up. The marauders' stronghold has been locked in, and the Oldman Small Town army has been mobilized. We will take them down in a single attack, and our name will shake the forest. The locals revealed a look of hesitation. Miracle Commerce had locked in on the marauders' stronghold this quickly. They clearly didn't do anything these past few days. Could there be a problem? The Oldman Small Town army had already been mobilized. Miracle Commerce's 6,000 berserkers had all been mobilized, with 800 storm rifles and 200 source energy cannons. The rest were all equipped with source energy submachine guns, and each of them had source energy grenades. This was a decisive battle. Vivian was leading the 1,000 elven unicorn archers to participate in the battle. If the elves were participating, what reason did they have to not believe it? They immediately returned to their tribes and had the warriors of their tribes prepare for battle. Actually, for Miracle Commerce, the small town's army was more than enough. The reason why they brought these locals was mainly to show them Miracle Commerce's strength. The army of tens of thousands set off. Chu Tian brought several hundred people to the meeting place with the trolls. When Chu Tian arrived, several hundred marauders had already been waiting for a long time. The heavens I had seen over 1,000 troll cavalry, but there were only several hundred in front of them. The other marauders had already scattered to scout. These marauders were not brainless and were worried that Oldman Small Town would ambush them in the name of negotiating. A burly troll marauder walked out. He was more than 2 meters tall, and his upper body was half naked. His muscles looked like they were carved out of stone, and his body was covered in strange totems. He held a long black spear in each hand, and suddenly thrust it deep into the ground. A powerful aura spread out from Man, making everyone feel a sense of oppression. Chu Tian did not bring Vivian with him. Therefore, the small town did not have a single true spirit cultivator. When the troll marauders saw Oldman Small Town's lineup, they couldn't help looking down on them. But what kind of experts could a trivial small town have? This kind of lineup, this kind of reaction, was also very normal. Ha ha ha. The troll leader gave a few sinister laughs. I thought you didn't dare come. Chu Tian swaggered in front of the marauders. I've always kept my word, so since I've invited everyone, how could I not come? You do have a bit of courage. The troll leader pulled out a jet black spear, and his green eyes stared right at them. Don't waste words. We only kill people who don't know what's good for them. Since you're tactful, I'll spare your lives, but you must agree to our request. Chu Tian calmly asked, I'd like to hear the details. First, hand over all the source stones and resources you have. Second, pay tribute to us from now on. 90% of the resources and source stones you earn will be given to us. Third, the troll leader looked over Nangong Yun, Meng Ying, and the others behind Chu Tian with an obscene gaze. These human women aren't bad. They'll be responsible for serving us from now on. This troll leader's tone was very high and mighty, as if having Chu Tian do these things was a great honor for him. Chu Tian gave a slight nod. Just these? The humans being this calm made the marauders a bit surprised. What did this fellow mean? Was this not enough? The troll leader nodded. Source stones, resources, and women, these are all ours. We are not interested in your lives, so you should be thankful for our benevolence. Now obediently hand over the things we're offering. Third leader, I haven't done it with human women before. I want to go first with that red-haired woman. Don't try to steal her from me. The troll marauders already considered these people to be in the bag, even starting to fight for the right to go first. The troll race had a violent nature, and their sense of beauty was similar to the mainstream of the continent. Therefore, human beauties were very attractive to them. Your Excellency has made this many requests. Shouldn't this one also make one? You have other requests? Chu Tian reached out to grab the sword hilt on his back and slowly pulled out the ice mirror like netherworld sword. With a gentle wave of the sword, he pointed it at the troll leader. It's very simple. I only have one request, and that is to borrow your head to play with for 2 days. This small request, I hope you won't refuse? The marauders were stunned for a few seconds before breaking out in laughter. Was this human making a joke? He dared to say this kind of thing with an awakened soul realm cultivation. The marauders' third leader was a true soul realm expert. The marauders could be arrogant in the forest for so many years. It was not without reason. In this large bandit organization, there were many experts like clouds. A human that didn't even have hair, yet actually dared to fight with the leader of the marauders? The troll leader's eyebrows came together, and his eyes filled with anger from being teased. Do you know what price you'll pay for this? Pay your head. Nangong Yin was filled with anger when she saw the troll. She angrily roared out, "This old lady will kill you first." Nangong Yun's arms turned into flame wings, and with a fierce flap, she instantly flew into the air. Just like a large bird, she first circled in the air, and after her speed reached its peak, she charged at the enemy like a burning moth. Seeking death, the troll's black spear was thrown out like a black thunderbolt. The flames on Nangong Yun's body were instantly torn apart, and the fierce black energy pierced through her body. Even the Starlight Immortal body could not block this kind of fierce attack. Meng Yingying was shocked. Elder sister Nangong. Nangong Yun crashed into several large trees and was embedded in a giant rock. The flames on her body exploded and turned her surroundings into a sea of flames. The rocks around her were burnt to a crisp. Everyone's faces fell. Such strong strength. With this kind of attack, even a peak 9th awakened soul layer cultivator with a defensive cultivation technique would find it hard to block. Nangong Yin had just reached the peak 8th awakened soul layer. Large amounts of flames came from the crack in the mountain as Nangong Yin stepped out of the lava. What was a bit unbelievable was that she was not injured at all. The troll was a bit stunned. That attack should have passed through her body. Did this fellow have an immortal body? Nangong Yun's face was a bit pale. It was clear she had consumed quite a bit of spirit energy. Was this the large difference between the awakened soul realm and the true spirit realm? Sure enough, even cultivating a divine technique could not make up for it. Nangong, move aside. Chu Tian raised his sword as he walked forward. This fellow is mine. Chapter 787. Chu Tian was clearly asking for a sky-high price to scare people, but the elves were a strict and serious race. If he really asked the Elven Council for compensation, the Elven Council would have to accept it. This person was eloquent and the elves were stiff, so even if the elves could not compensate him this much, they would still suffer a large loss. In just a short day, he had obtained the support of the flower fairies and was given an important task by Cenarius, adding in the fact that his identity and abilities were not simple. Even if the elves were angry, they could not move against him. They could not let him cause trouble in the council. There was no benefit in angering those old elves. Ulysses wiped his sweat. The Elven Council is very busy dealing with the large and small matters of the tribe. Even if you ask for compensation, with this kind of complex and large compensation, it won't be finished in 10-20 years. Our elves can wait, but the humans can't wait that long. How about you go back first and we'll talk about the compensation later? Chu Tian didn't want any compensation at all. Even if the Forest of Chaos elves didn't lose to the warring kingdoms in terms of overall strength, Their economic ability was very poor. This was because the elves did not do business on the continent, so they did not have a commodity economy. It was purely a closed, small farming economy, simply saying that the entire clan was poor. It's not impossible for me to go back. Chu Tian gave a condition. You have to return my employee Vivian to me first, otherwise I will not leave. Vivian was the company's only spatial engineer, and now was the time to use the space warehouse. Just one space warehouse was not enough, and if Vivian was held captive by the elf for a year, Miracle Commerce's development would be slowed down. This was something Chu Tian could not tolerate. Ulysses discussed it with the elders. Looking at the current situation, forcefully taking Vivian away would not be good for the elves. It would be better to have Vivian stay by Chu Tian's side and continue learning spatial technology. Not only would this troublesome fellow Chu Tian find an excuse to cause trouble, it would also allow the elves to introduce the most advanced spatial technology on the continent. This was killing two birds with one stone. Although it was against the rules and the council could not avoid a war of words, the pros and cons were very clear, so everyone would understand. Ulysses could only nod. All right, then we'll have Vivian stay in Oldman's small town to be interrogated. Chu Tian let out a long sigh of relief. He had finally escaped from the elves' hands. Actually, the elves were one of the easiest races to deal with on the continent. If the other side was the spirit beasts, they wouldn't have wasted so much words. They wouldn't have captured Chu Tian and would have killed him in the small town. Then they would have flattened the small town and taken everything in it. How could Chu Tian live until now? But the elves were the strongest race on the continent, and now they were one of the strongest races on the continent. This race had its merits. At least cooperating with the elves wouldn't be like cooperating with humans. Big brother Chu Tian. When Vivian was brought out, she immediately shouted out in excitement. She charged over and gave Chu Tian a large hug. She heard that the elves wanted to make peace with Chu Tian, and the elves even agreed to let Vivian return to Oldman Small Town. This matter made Vivian very excited. She was most worried that Chu Tian would have an irreconcilable conflict with his clansmen. Vivian would feel very awkward standing on his side. If the elves were willing to accept Chu Tian and even cooperate with Chu Tian, it would be a good thing for both the elves and Chu Tian. This was because compared to the other superpowers in the Forest of Chaos, the elves were the friendliest and most reliable. Are we going back? Vivian said, I don't want to stay here a second longer. No rush. Chu Tian said to Vivian, we'll first build a space warehouse here that will make it easier for us to transport the Lost Forest resources. The Tree of Life tribe's elves knew that Chu Tian wanted to build a space warehouse here, and they were all filled with excitement, especially the elven children. Chu Tian's skills and actions had already spread throughout the tribe, so the elves all knew what the space warehouse was. If the Tree of Life tribe could build a space warehouse, wouldn't Miracle Commerce's magical products be sent to the Tree of Life tribe in minutes? Magnetic sound machines, video players, delicious canned food, and many other fun things. The elves couldn't leave the tribe because of the tribe rules, but they could enjoy many entertainment activities. To the Tree of Life tribe's elves, this was a very good thing. Miracle Commerce only used a single space warehouse. This space warehouse belonged to Miracle Commerce, so naturally it couldn't be open to the public. However, before Vivian was brought back by the elves, she was already preparing to build a second space warehouse. This space was around the same size as the first space warehouse, although the shape hadn't been changed and it was just like an irregular pancake. It had already been marked with spatial symbols. Vivian immediately began to arrange the space warehouse's summoning array. She also reserved a few backup energy pillars so that the space warehouse could be opened. As for the transformation of the warehouse's shape, Vivian could return to the small town and slowly complete it in the laboratory. After 3 days, the space warehouse was officially completed. This space warehouse would be Miracle Commerce's special transportation channel to the Lost Forest. Although it was made from Miracle Commerce, if the elves, flower fairies, and trance needed it, Chu Tian didn't recommend helping them send things over. The elves began to cheer. With this source energy array, the elves could enjoy the convenience of the space warehouse. Therefore, a large group of children surrounded Princess Vivian, asking her to send back some gifts when she went out. You can all be assured, I won't forget everyone. Vivian waved her hand in high spirits. I will definitely send back many fun things for everyone. With the little princess promise, the elves were assured and left. At this time, the first batch of lost crystals was sent over and bags were thrown into the space warehouse. Then the various precious gifts the flower fairies gave Chu Tian were placed inside. Everything was done. They could leave now. With Vivian's spatial ability, she could reach Oldman's small town in around an hour without bringing any objects or people. But other than Chu Tian, there were several dozen flower fairies who wanted to go with her. Vivian couldn't bring all these people with her spatial ability, so she asked the elves for several flying mounts. She carried them in the direction of Oldman's small town. Goodbye, everyone. I will definitely bring back many fun things for you all. Vivian smiled as she waved her hand at the elves. The elven elders all had strange expressions on their faces. Princess Vivian had seriously violated the elves' rules, and a human had violated the elves' great taboo. In the end, not only were they not punished, they were even allowed to return. What kind of matter was this? If this matter was spread in the forest, it would have a bad influence on the elves. Perhaps there would be more rebellious or curious elves sneaking out, causing the elves to fall into chaos. Ulysses had no way to deal with this. Now, he had to think of how to deal with those old fellows in the council. When Vivian left the elven tribe, she felt her body relax, like the shackles on her body had been broken. She felt an unprecedented freedom. This feeling was too great. Vivian never thought that she would be able to solve all the problems this easily. The elves did not dare look down on Chu Tian. The trance gave Chu Tian heavy responsibilities, and the flower fairies and elves became friends. Now Miracle Commerce had a large chance of working together with the elves, which was the situation Vivian wanted to see the most. If the elves could absorb Chu Tian's wisdom, they would become even stronger. After a day and night, everyone arrived at the valley where Oldman's small town was. In these 10 days, Oldman's small town did not seem to be in chaos. Rather, it was very orderly. After all, there were over 1,000 elven elites stationed in Oldman's small town. These elves were not a normal battle strength, so how could normal locals dare provoke them? The elven army was sent by the elders to maintain peace in Oldman's small town. They had stayed here for many days, so it was hard to not enter the town to buy supplies. When the elves entered the town to take a look, they were immediately attracted by the strangeness of the small town. After a few days, the elves all had a magnetic sound machine, and they used it to listen to the human radio every day. Other than that, Oldman's small town's movie began to play, which attracted the elves' interest. They gradually moved from the valley to the small town, finally living in the small town. These over 1,000 elves were members of the Tree of Life tribe, and most of them were around 200 years old. They had never left the tribe before, so how could they resist the temptation of miracle commerce? The music and stories on the human radio, the wonderful plots of the movies, and the delicious source energy food of the humans, all of this deeply attracted them. This made the elves who had closed themselves off for 100 years feel for the first time that the world was this wonderful. Their clansmen lived in a small place for generations. Their lives were too boring. These elves even had a thought. It would be great if they could stay here forever. At this time, Princess Vivian came back. Vivian took out a token from the tribe's great elder and announced that from today onwards, the over 1,000 elven soldiers would be responsible for protecting Princess Vivian. In other words, from today onwards, the elven army would be managed by Princess Vivian. The elves were all very shocked, not knowing what had happened. Princess Vivian had been brought back to the tribe, and not only did she not come back, she even sent an army over. What was going on? Chapter 788. Chu Tian's subordinates all had their own duties. Meng Qingwu was in charge of the company. Meng Yingying was in charge of supporting the various departments, and Nan Gongyin was the one with the strongest fighting ability, so she became the most important battle talent. Although she was only in the peak 8th Awakened Soul layer, she could still fight against a peak 9th Awakened Soul layer cultivator. But for this kind of battle talent, although it wasn't hard to jump levels, it wasn't easy to jump levels. The difference of a single realm was like the distance between heaven and earth. An awakened soul cultivator fighting a body refinement cultivator, and a true spirit cultivator fighting an awakened soul cultivator. There was no suspense at all. There was not a single true spirit cultivator in Ullman Small Town. So how could the Marauders place them in their eyes? This human brat really didn't know what was good for him. How could he be this arrogant? This was simply seeking his own death. You're seeking death. The Marauder leader gave a few sinister laughs. What reason do I have to not help you? The two of them faced each other. The surging killing intent and pressure collided violently in the surrounding space, causing the others to involuntarily take a few steps back. Chu Tian's sword slightly trembled, just like a wild beast that couldn't wait to attack. This was Chu Tian's first time fighting a true spirit realm expert. Although Chu Tian was very confident, Chu Tian didn't know what kind of battle strength he could reach with his current strength. The Marauder leader made a move first. A black spear turned into a black thunderbolt as it charged at Chu Tian's chest. He wanted to pierce through Chu Tian's body just like how he pierced through Nangong Yun. But this time it was even fiercer. He wanted to personally shatter his internal organs and shatter his heart. He didn't believe it. Could there be a person who could still live after having their heart shattered? He wanted to let this stupid human know what kind of ending an ant facing a fierce tiger would face. The Netherworld sword released a beautiful and dazzling sword glow. Dang! The tip of the sword and the tip of the spear collided. It was like a needle meeting in all. The swift and fierce sword chi and spear radiance scattered in all directions like broken water droplets. The entire grassland was blown away, and the surrounding forest seemed to have experienced a storm. It was blown to the side in an instant, and countless branches were torn to shreds. Whether it was Ullman Small Town or the Marauders, when they felt this powerful collision, they couldn't help moving back a bit. Another explosion sound rang out. Chu Tian and the Marauder leader both moved back 50 to 60 feet. Chu Tian's face was still as calm as water, not showing any expression at all. He was silently evaluating the might of his sword. The Marauder leader's expression changed dramatically. He had never thought that his opponent would be able to block his attack without even dodging. Such a strong sword chi. The moment the Marauder leader clashed with the other side, there was a sinister and ruthless energy that entered his body through the spear. Even with the Marauder leader's strength, he was not prepared and suffered small loss. The human could actually block the third leader's attack. Was this a dream? The third leader was a true spirit cultivator. The Ullman Small Town side was filled with shock compared to the troll. The mayor was actually this strong. It seemed like they had underestimated this human too much. So it's like this. You're a sword cultivator, so you must have cultivated at least a perfection realm sword art. That's why you can release such a strong sword chi. The Marauder leader's face turned dark for a few seconds before he suddenly thought of something. But no matter how strong your sword art is, how many attacks can an awakened soul cultivator's spirit energy withstand? Chu Tian gave a laugh. You can try. The Marauders were once again enraged by Chu Tian's relaxed and frivolous attitude. Damn, he was clearly this weak, but he dared to be this arrogant. Since it's like this, then I'll let him see my true strength. The Marauder leader's spirit energy condensed into the shape of a three-headed snake. Each head of the three-headed snake had a different color, being red, green, and purple. Three different energies surrounded the troll. The third leader is using his source spirit. This three-headed demonic snake source spirit is famous for being strong. Let's see how this brat will deal with it. Chu Tian's eyes slightly narrowed. A rare multi-attributed source spirit? This type of source spirit could have multiple attributes of battle energy at the same time, so they were often a bit more difficult to deal with than ordinary cultivators. The black spears returned to his hands like two black pythons. The moment the Marauder leader grabbed the two black spears, his aura increased by at least 10 times. The three snake source spirits actually split apart, with one coiling around his left hand, one coiling around his right hand, and the last one coming out of his head. It turned into a strong, corrosive poison mist that charged at Chu Tian. Poison attributed source spirit? Chu Tian directly turned into a sword light and escaped. Want to run? How could it be that easy? The Marauder leader gave a few fiendish laughs. His legs stepped off the ground, and he teleported forward, locking onto Chu Tian, who was in an invisible state. Die. The two black spears turned into demonic snakes that attacked Chu Tian. The two demonic snakes that coiled around his body released their power. One of them made people feel numb, and the other made them feel weak. The two powers intertwined with each other on Chu Tian's body, making Chu Tian feel like the air around him had turned into cement. Each of his movements felt like they were being slowed down by 1,000 pounds. Such a strange source spirit's power. Each attack of the Marauder leader would cause a negative effect, weakening the other side's resistance. Even a true spirit cultivator of the same level would be hit if they were caught off guard, not to mention an awakened soul cultivator. Awakened soul cultivators could not resist the numbness and weakness of the demonic snakes at all. Most awakened soul cultivators would lose all resistance the moment they attacked. Sword. The demon god's sword source spirit soared into the sky. Chu Tian borrowed the power of the demon god's sword to scatter the energy enveloping him, giving him a short moment to catch his breath. The netherworld sword merged with the demon god's sword's destructive power, and the blue and white sword glow turned purple and black. Its strength had doubled, and its destructive power had increased by 10 times. Netherworld Ghost Slash. Chu Tian did not hesitate for half a second as he slashed out with his sword. The burning netherworld sword slammed into the two demon snakes. The raging flames and destructive energy completely disintegrated the power of the demon snakes. With a loud explosion, the two sides once again bounced off each other. Evenly matched again, both sides released their source spirits. Chu Tian used a single slash to scatter the Marauder leader's source spirit. From this point, it could be seen that Chu Tian had the upper hand in this exchange. The Marauder leader's face was filled with shock and anger, even flying into a rage. Damn, I want to see how long you can last. This time the Marauder leader had experienced Chu Tian's strength. This fellow was not using tricks, he was meeting force with force, meeting force with force. Without any tricks, he had used his peak 9th awakened soul layer cultivation to fight against a cultivator in the first true spirit layer. But the Marauder leader was not panicked. This was because even if the other side was heaven-defying, he was still an awakened soul cultivator. These two attacks had consumed less than 1% of a true spirit cultivator's energy, but it had consumed at least 10% of an awakened soul cultivator's energy. How long could he last like this? I thought you were strong. Chu Tian revealed a look of disappointment as he shook his head with a sigh. In the end, you only have this bit of skill? This kind of battle without any challenge is not fun at all. I don't want to play anymore. I'll take care of you with this move. Contempt. Naked contempt. It was as if killing him was as easy as eating a bun. Overestimating yourself. The Marauder leader released an even stronger spirit energy than before. I'll let you have a taste of the Troll clan's inherited secret technique. The Marauder leader was completely enraged. He released a special secret technique, and his body was instantly covered in spirit energy, turning into a 3-headed demonic snake. An ancient and cruel aura surrounded him. The troll used his source spirit to its peak, increasing the effect of his source spirit by 10 times. Flame Demon Transformation. The moment the Marauder leader released the secret technique, Chu Tian's body began to burn. The raging flames turned him into a fierce and terrifying flame demon. In an instant, he suddenly disappeared. Chu Tian charged forward with a speed several times faster than before. The Marauders were barely able to lock onto Chu Tian, and a strong slowing and curse power fell onto Chu Tian's body. Even for a true spirit cultivator, this power was enough to make them unable to move for a while. He did not believe that Chu Tian could break it. As expected, Chu Tian was forced to stop. His body burned as he stood in the air, unable to move forward at all. The chance was here. Immediately kill him. The marauder leader roared out as it prepared to attack. He never would have thought that the flames on Chu Tian's body would suddenly grow stronger. A flame separated from his body and turned into an identical flame demon that also held a burning sword in its hand. This flaming demon then turned into two into four into 8. The marauder leader was instantly surrounded by 8 flame demons in the flame demon transformation state. This is... The marauder leader was filled with fear. This was not an illusion. Each flame demon had gathered a strong power, and he couldn't tell which one was the main body. Netherworld clone slash. The 8 figures disappeared at the same time. Countless dazzling sword lights formed a giant net that instantly tore apart the bandit leader's body. With an unstoppable momentum, the bandit leader was torn to pieces. Instant kill. Instant kill. The marauder leader did not have any room to resist at all. The Netherworld Clone Slash was the Netherworld Flame Sword's Perfection realm's final killing move. It allowed Chu Tian to instantly create clones, and each clone could use 100% of the main body's full strength slash. This was equal to duplicating his strength by several times and releasing it all at once. Adding in the Flame Demon Transformation secret technique, even a true spirit expert could not block it. The third leader is dead. The other marauders were all stunned. They never would have dreamed of this kind of result. After Chu Tian killed a true spirit cultivator, he had consumed quite a bit of energy. He immediately took several pills to recover before giving an order, kill them all, before the trolls could react. The source energy weapons were raised, and the wild storm of source energy bullets instantly filled the forest. The trolls had no way to fight back against this dense and terrifying attack. When they experienced the might of the source energy revolution, they finally realized Oldman Small Town's true strength. It was already too late. These fellows were destined to die here. Chu Tian said, "The marauders will react soon. We have to destroy their base before they escape and kill all these loathsome locusts." When they saw Chu Tian and his army's strength, the Oldman Small Town people did not hesitate at all. Chapter 789. The high-level members of Miracle Commerce were all present, and the one leading them was an otherworldly white-clothed woman. She had a full figure and was dignified and beautiful, just like a goddess that didn't eat the food of mortals. If it wasn't Miracle Commerce's vice chairman Meng Qingwu, who else could it be? When she learned that Chu Tian and Vivian had been taken away by the elves, she immediately led the 3,000 trained barbarian berserkers to Oldman Canyon. At that time, the small town was on the brink of collapse. This newly formed alliance was about to fall apart, and it was all thanks to the young miss rushing over to stabilize the situation. Meng Qingwu's ability to manage the overall situation was not questionable. Now that he returned to the small town, Chu Tian was surprised to find that the small town did not decline. Rather, it was even more prosperous than before. After Meng Qingwu came to Oldman Small Town to appease everyone, she immediately made changes to the small town system. She also improved the small town's laws, making the small town even more orderly. Meng Yingying punched Chu Tian's chest. "Why did you take so long to come back? I thought you were locked up by the elves, and I was prepared to bring people to the elven tribe to save you. There was no way around it. I'm this handsome, but when I went to the elves, countless young elven girls begged to marry me. I had to spend a great deal of effort to keep my integrity and escape." Chu Tian's face was as thick as a wall. "Look, even the little flower fairies can't resist my beauty. Didn't they all come with me? Damn narcissist. Truly shameless." Meng Yingying fiercely said, "If I was an elf, I would first hang you up and beat you up. Let's see if your mouth is still as sharp as before." Wah, so fierce. This little girl hadn't had sex in a long time. Meng Qingwu's expression did not change, but it could be seen that she was no less worried than her little sister in these past few days. What happened in these past few days? Why did the elves let you all come back? Did they not make things difficult for you? The elves did not do anything to me. Rather, they let me take advantage of them. The two sisters were very clear on what kind of person Chu Tian was. It was not strange for this kind of thing to happen to him. But after asking about the details, they were still shocked by Chu Tian's luck. Especially the matter of him allying with the flower fairies and the spiritual technology he was preparing to develop, it all shocked the two sisters. Although they did not understand the flower fairies, when they saw the flower fairies, the little cute creatures immediately captivated them. Welcome to the small town. Meng Yingying walked in front of the flower fairies. Why do you look so tired? The spiritual energy here was very thin. The flower fairies were immortal beings, but that did not mean their bodies were good. The flower fairies were very sensitive to the environment. So when they were brought from a place with dense spiritual energy to a place with thin spiritual energy, they would immediately fall into a weak state. But Chu Tian had already thought of a solution. Chu Tian set up a spiritual energy gathering array and then placed the precious herbs the flower fairies brought in there, creating a new garden for the flower fairies. The flower fairies could recover their vitality and live normally in the small town. After settling down the flower fairies, Chu Tian held a high-level meeting. He first checked everyone's condition and cultivation base. Chu Tian's cultivation was in the lead, already in the 9th Awakened Soul layer. He could easily defeat a marquee expert in the peak 9th Awakened Soul layer, and he had a 50% chance of defeating a first true Spirit layer expert. The others weren't slow either. Nangong Yun's cultivation was the fastest, reaching the 8th Awakened Soul layer. Next was the Meng sisters, reaching the 7th Awakened Soul layer. Chun Bingyu and Dongfang Haoren were still at the peak 9th Awakened Soul layer, but they were just waiting for an opportunity to charge into the true spirit realm. Chu Tian was a little pleased. Everyone's cultivation speed wasn't bad, but in a place like the Forest of Chaos, this bit of strength was still lacking and couldn't be used. After all, the Forest of Chaos couldn't compare to the Southern Summer Country. There were many true Spirit Realm experts here, and there were many unknown true Spirit Realm experts that came from who knows where. Miracle Commerce couldn't do this without several true Spirit Realm experts. They couldn't count on Vivian alone, right? Vivian was suitable for beheading the leader, but she couldn't do a large-scale battle. After all, spatial attacks consumed too much spirit energy. So, Chu Tian set a goal. He would first use Miracle Commerce's rich resources to increase everyone's strength. If Miracle Commerce's overall strength became stronger, they would have the confidence to stand in the forest. This was not a difficult matter. Miracle Commerce was very rich, and when they were in the Southern Summer Country, they had already prepared enough resources to cultivate several true spirit cultivators. Now that they had managed the small town in the Forest of Chaos for over a month, they had collected thousands of level 2 sacred herbs. Even the Southern Summer Country's treasury couldn't compare to this. Even more, Chu Tian had obtained quite a bit of fairy wine, which was all prepared for everyone to break through the true spirit realm bottleneck. With the flower fairies assisting them, it would be much easier for them to break through, right? Chu Tian did what he said and immediately increased everyone's strength. In just a few days, the young Miss, Yingying, Yin Yao, and Feng Kaidai all broke through 2 levels, reaching the 8th Awakened Soul layer. Nangong Yun reached the peak 8th Awakened Soul layer and was attacking the 9th Awakened Soul layer. Chun Bingyu and Dongfang Haoren were important targets. Not only did Chu Tian refine several top-grade sacred pills for them, he also prepared a cup of fairy wine and a flower fairy to help them break through their bottlenecks. Now that the 2 of them were in closed-door cultivation, Chu Tian had an 80% chance of success. Everyone's strength was quickly increasing. With this speed, in just a month or 2, these high-level members would all be true spirit realm experts. At that time, Miracle Commerce would be able to enter the true 100-race battlefield in the Forest of Chaos. When Chu Tian finished busying himself and was prepared to relax, Meng Qingwu suddenly found him. "I have something to give you. Perhaps it will be of some help to you." "The young miss wants to give something to me?" This was truly a rare matter. The young miss took out a sheathed long blade and presented it to Chu Tian with both hands. Chu Tian was stunned for a bit. He could feel the powerful energy contained in this weapon, This blade is the weapon of the War Hound's Kingdom's true spirit cultivator. This nether flame blade is the War Hound's Kingdom's Malam's weapon. From the information gathered from all sides, it is a true soul contracting soul item, and it is the Hell Song tribe's inherited treasure blade. Originally, I wanted to find a suitable person to use such a prized artifact. However, until now, I have not been able to find one. A while ago, I sent this saber to the laboratory for research and discovered that it seems to contain a very extraordinary flame energy. I think it might be of help to your cultivation technique. Is that so? Let me see. Chu Tian took the nether flame blade and pulled out the netherworld sword. The two weapons gently touched, and although he did not use any spirit energy where the blade and sword touched, there was an explosion. The power of the two weapons automatically flowed out, like two pieces of iron absorbing each other, or like two enemies with a blood feud, wanting to swallow each other whole. As expected, the nether flame blade was very similar to the netherworld sword. The nether flame blade was also made from an innate spiritual flame. If you didn't guess wrong, it should be the dark spiritual flame. The dark spiritual flame and the netherworld flame were similar, but the dark spiritual flame was an innate spiritual flame born from a dark environment, and the netherworld flame was an innate spiritual flame born from death energy. Although there were some differences, they were the same. So was the law of the jungle. From the clash of the blade and sword, Chu Tian could roughly judge that the nether flame blade and the netherworld sword were not that different in strength. If one side could swallow the other, then it would be a leap in quality. Very good. Young mistress, this gift came at the right time. Chu Tian quickly gave his thanks. Without saying anything else, he immediately went into closed-door cultivation. Chu Tian's cultivation technique had reached a bottleneck, and he hadn't made any progress in a long time. It was hard to find suitable materials for the large success realm netherworld flame sword, but Chu Tian never would have thought that there would be something that could help him improve by his side. Chu Tian found a quiet cave in the valley to go into closed-door cultivation. With a blade and sword in hand, he began to cultivate. The blade and sword were both strong weapons, but who would swallow who in the end? Chu Tian didn't even think about it, and immediately urged the two weapons to collide. The blue and white flames and the purple and black flames instantly soared up and intertwined with each other. Every second, they fiercely collided dozens of times. The surrounding mountain rocks were shattered and a large number of rocks rolled down, as if there was an earthquake. Such a strong ability. If it wasn't for the fact that he was in the 9th Awakened Soul layer, Chu Tian would not have been able to control it. The two strange flames were evenly matched, but as time went on, the Abyss Netherworld flame gradually gained the upper hand. If it was a normal Netherworld flame, the Dark Spirit flame would not be afraid. They were the same grade, and it was unknown who would win. Chu Tian's Netherworld flame was not simple. This Netherworld flame had not only been nurtured in the Spirit King's body for 1,000 years, it had also absorbed the Hellfire Demon's green Abyss flame, so it had an Abyss attribute. The Spirit flame could even turn into a human form, so whether it was spirituality or quality, it surpassed the Dark Spirit flame by far. Finally, the Nether Flame Saber's flames could not hold on any longer and was completely absorbed by the Netherworld sword. Finally, with a dang sound, it snapped in half. Chu Tian threw away the two pieces of the Nether Flame Saber and saw the purple and black, blue and white flames intertwining on the Netherworld sword. After the Netherworld sword swallowed the Nether Flame Saber's energy, the weapon spirit's strength continued to increase. Finally, it reached a point, but it did not stop, and it continued to charge forward. The mountain began to shake again. Suddenly, the light of treasures soared into the sky. Chu Tian could feel that the weapon spirit netherworld strength had actually reached the true spirit level. This meant that the netherworld sword's quality had increased. It was originally a level 2 soul contracting weapon, but now it had become a level 3 soul contracting weapon. It was now a high-grade level 3 soul contracting weapon. Equipment could be upgraded? This was something that no craftsman had ever heard of. But the Netherworld Sword was a high-grade level 3 soul contracting weapon, but it had been in the 10,000 corpse ancient tomb for too long, so it had weakened. It was just recovering its strength. Not to mention that the netherworld flame had been nurtured in the Spirit King's body for 1,000 years and had swallowed the Abyss Demon's green abyss flame. Then it had swallowed the Nether Flame Saber's 1,000-year dark spirit flame, so its potential had already far surpassed before. Perhaps it still had a lot of room to evolve. When a netherworld sword refined the dark spirit flame's energy, it instantly refined the spiritual energy into Chu Tion's body. This allowed Chu Tion's strength to quickly go from the 9th awakened soul layer to the peak 9th awakened soul layer. This was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the netherworld flame sword had reached the large success realm, and he had finally reached the highest realm. Chapter 790. Chu Tian took care of the marauders and did not stay any longer. He immediately brought Nangong, Ying, and the others to meet up with the young miss. This place was less than 50 miles away from the marauders' temporary base. Meng Qingwu led the small town's army with a total of 30,000 people, moving through the forest. They carefully hid themselves in the forest, preparing to attack. Elder sister, we're done. Meng Ying ran over to see Meng Qingwu. Her face was filled with joy as she said to her elder sister in a small voice, Chu Tian killed a leader in an instant, but some of the marauders have been caught. Perhaps they have already brought the news back. If we don't attack now, perhaps the marauders will run away. Our reinforcements haven't arrived yet. Nangong Ying found that the people lying in ambush in the forest were all the small town's army. Didn't the local tribe say they would send their elites to help? There are over 70 to 80,000 marauders, and they are all elites with decent battle strength. They also have giant bats as flying mounts. Can we beat them with this little bit of people? There's no time to wait for them. Meng Qingwu was not surprised. These locals were clearly suspicious of miracle commerce. Although they said they would send tens of thousands of warriors, they were actually very slow. It was clear they didn't want to be the first to attack, so they were just watching from distance. If their attack failed, they would definitely turn around and run. They wouldn't risk offending the marauders to help miracle commerce. Of course, if their attack succeeded, they might come and help. No matter what, Chu Tian didn't care at all. If he relied on these fellows, he wouldn't be able to fight this battle. To miracle commerce, this battle was not as simple as chasing away a group of bandits. It was also a chance for miracle commerce to show off their strength. It was a good chance to kill a chicken to warn the monkeys. There were countless bandits like the marauders in the forest. If they chased away a group, another group would come, never ending. Only by fighting a beautiful battle and using a thunderous method to destroy the other side would they be able to deter the locals and the bandits, preventing something like this from happening again. Miracle Commerce did not just want to show off to their enemies and potential enemies. They also wanted to show off their muscles to their allies and potential allies. In the forest of chaos, strength was everything. Whoever's fist was harder had the right to speak. Miracle Commerce had enough strength, so who wouldn't be convinced by Miracle Commerce? Miracle Commerce only had a small piece of land on the edge of the forest and didn't touch any of the giants. The forest giants did not need to provoke Miracle Commerce, and no one dared to move against Miracle Commerce here. This was the only way they could develop in peace. Whether it's for a show or a demonstration, we have to fight a beautiful battle. Chu Tian still wanted to confirm before attacking. What are your preparations? We can confirm that the enemy is hiding in the cave in front of us. The Heaven's Punishment has already reached the best attack position of 5,000 meters in the air. Meng Qingwu then added, the interference array you arrange has already been activated, so it's not easy to find us hiding in the forest. Since it's like this, let's begin. Chu Tian gave a satisfied nod. Let the elves be in charge of the rear and the rest of the troops charge forward. The elves had not truly joined the small town after all. Chu Tian did not want a few elves to die in battle, and then those fellows would cause trouble for him. The tens of thousands of allied troops moved through the dense forest, stopping several miles away from the mountain they were hiding in. There were marauders riding bats, flying over them, so this was clearly their range of surveillance. The marauders did not know that miracle commerce could block the ultrasonic waves of the bat beasts, but tens of thousands of people was not a small number. If they were too close, there was a large risk of being exposed. It's fine to prepare here. Chu Tian made a hand signal to Meng Qingwu. Begin. The berserkers will advance first, and the others will climb down. The 6,000 barbarian berserkers took out their source energy weapons and charged into the forest. Meng Qingwu took out a communication device and connected to the airship above them. Heaven's punishment, this is Meng Qingwu. Confirm the target and begin the attack. I repeat, begin the attack. Heaven's punishment received. A low and deep voice came from the communication device. The forest army felt this was strange. They didn't know what Chu Tian was doing. Why did he want them to lie down in the forest? But they didn't dare disobey Chu Tian's orders, so they could only obediently lie down on the ground. The Heaven's Punishment airship was a large airship, and the surface was covered in reflective mirrors. These mirrors were not normal mirrors, but rather image transfer mirrors. Not only could they display various images, they could also display images on one side to the other, creating a transparent front and back state. Even if one looked closely, they could only see a transparent outline moving. If one looked at it from a distance, it was hard to see with the naked eye. This was an airship made with current technology. It could be considered a ghost floating in the air. Target locked. Height is around 5,000 meters. Wind speed is normal. Environment is normal. Activate 100 heavy high-altitude bombs. The bottom cabin of the Miracle airship opened to reveal a bomb bay. There were meter-long bombs inserted into it like rows of black, treasured swords. These bombs were completely black, and there were large amounts of runes engraved on them. One could vaguely see that each bomb contained highly compressed honeycomb crystal oil bombs. The power of this bomb was equal to 100 source energy grenades. This wave of bombs was equal to 10,000 source energy grenades exploding at the same time. Activate. These long sword-like heavy bombs were activated and the runes on their surface lit up. As if they were moved by something, with a PU sound, they instantly left the airship's bomb bay and fell to the ground like meteors. This kind of speed was very fast. This was a very natural falling speed, because each bomb was covered in gravity runes. As long as the runes were activated, the weight of the bomb would increase by several dozen times. So each bomb would be incomparably heavy. Because of the air resistance, their acceleration would increase, so they could fall without being blown away by the wind. More than 100 bombs fell from the vast sky, but it was actually very inconspicuous. It was like more than 100 small stones smashing into a mountain. However, when these inconspicuous black dots touched the mountain, the entire forest began to tremble as large amounts of light and heat were released. A terrifying cloud of energy soared into the sky, and the entire mountain was shaken to pieces, almost shattering to pieces. The surging streams of air surged forward, tearing the surrounding forest to pieces. The first wave of bombing is over. The deviation is less than 5%. Adjust the position. The second wave is 500 bombs. This first wave was just testing the waters. The second wave was over 500 bombs, and the explosive power was several times stronger than before. When they all landed on the mountain and exploded, the dazzling light even covered the sun in the sky. The small town's army and the locals that were watching in the distance were all stunned by this magnificent and terrifying scene. They finally understood what it meant to crumble mountains and crack the earth. What made their blood run cold was that they couldn't understand how all of this happened. It was like an incomparably terrifying explosion had appeared out of nowhere. The third wave of bombing. This time was 1,000 bombs. The entire majestic mountain had been bombarded 3 times, and almost half of it had collapsed. Flames covered the surrounding forest, and the ground was scorched black. The shockwave spread for 10 miles, and all the trees were uprooted, losing all signs of life. Even the air was incomparably scorched as it was completely covered in charcoal and ashes, making one's vision blurry. Heaven's Punishment's mission is complete. Currently retreating from current altitude. The Heaven's Punishment airship's weapons had all been released. Therefore, they immediately retreated and were currently returning to a safe altitude. This fast and powerful attack was definitely very sudden. If they were at the center of the explosion, even a high-level, true spirit cultivator would find it hard to retreat unscathed. The Marauders were not prepared at all and suddenly suffered this kind of intense bombardment. The casualties were at least 50 to 60%, and this was already an optimistic estimate. This large group of Marauders had not even started fighting, and they didn't even know what had happened, but they had already been destroyed by miracle commerce. Everyone charge! Kill all the Marauders! Chu Tian took out a loudspeaker and loudly shouted, "This is the result of offending my miracle commerce." The tens of thousands of soldiers of the Alliance saw Miracle Commerce's miraculous methods, and their morale was greatly boosted. They immediately stood up and picked up their weapons, charging into the sea of flames. The surviving Marauders climbed over the burning mountain rocks and climbed out with great difficulty. They saw a group of berserkers in heavy armor charging at them. Those fierce source energy weapons began to fire. Pitiful cries filled the air. 6,000 berserkers, several thousand source energy weapons. Under this kind of intense firepower, how many of these heavily injured Marauders could escape? This was simply a massacre. Chairman's orders: kill all of them. The Alliance searched for the Marauders, killing everyone they found, not leaving a single one alive, showing no mercy. For the Raiders, this was a nightmare they'd never experienced before. They'd never understood the meaning of hell so deeply before. 80,000 Marauders. An entire 80,000 Marauders. This was a group with high mobility and strong scouting abilities. Although they couldn't control a region, they had run amok in the forest for many years and had never been truly destroyed before. Now, they had been destroyed in just a few short minutes. When the leader of the Marauders crawled out of the ruins, he looked at the sea of fire and lava around him. His expression was twisted with fear and anger. What the hell is going on? What happened here? There was a spatial fluctuation in front of him. An elven girl appeared in front of him. The Marauder leader's expression slightly changed. He immediately sent out a fist, but it passed through Vivian's body and didn't hit Vivian. The Marauder leader's cultivation was similar to Vivian's. If he used his full strength, he could break through space, but he was injured and everything happened too suddenly, so he didn't have time to use his full strength. While the Marauder leader was slightly stunned, the Marauder leader was stunned. Vivian waved her hand. A spatial crack that was hard to see with the naked eye passed through the Marauder leader's body. The leader's pupils shrank, and he slowly lowered his head, his face filled with disbelief. He saw that his body had been cut open from the middle, slowly separating. The cut was smooth and neat, making his hair stand on end. No. This couldn't be real. This was most likely a dream, a nightmare. The Marauder leader couldn't believe what had happened until he died. After all, not long ago he was drinking and celebrating with his brothers in the cave. This earth-shattering change happened in a flash. No one could believe it. The leader is dead. It's over. The Marauders are finished. The Marauder leader had been killed by Vivian, the second leader had been killed by the airship, and the third leader had been killed by Chu Tian in the forest. Almost all the high-level leaders had died, so the surviving Marauders naturally collapsed. How could they still dare to fight? There was no suspense in this battle. It was a pure slaughter. From now on, a famous bandit group in the forest had been eliminated. Chapter 791. A sharp sword wind was released. Like cutting through tofu, it instantly created a giant sword mark in the canyon. The trees, grass, and rocks that were struck by the sword chi were immediately crushed into powder. A raging flame erupted from the sword chi, instantly enveloping a large area. Under the cover of the flame, there was no heat at all. The rocks and plants continued to wither and shatter, finally turning into dust that filled the sky. Chu Tian revealed a look of